Again, my name's Bob Cleveland. I've been with Gold Eagle for about 9 years now, and I kind of got hooked up with them through my lawnmower racing. There's a United States Lawnmower Racing Association, and I've been racing with them for about 17 years now. And before that, I was working at Snapper, the lawnmower company. So all we had to do to play with was lawnmowers, so I made lawnmowers go fast. This is my 104 octane boost mower that I set the land speed record on at Bonneville Salt Flats in 2010 at 96.529. So people call me crazy or brave, but you know, I just know that I'm pretty silly to be riding a lawnmower that fast. But we had a great time. In fact, I was out there with Chris Carr and Rocky Robertson when they set their records. In fact, Rocky set his record the same day I did. So that was kind of nice, you know, and they treated us, you know, on a lawnmower going almost 100 miles an hour just as good as they did the guys going almost 400 miles an hour. So that's a great event to go to.
Sir.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. You didn't have a snapper transmission in that.
I had a Briggs & Stratton V-twin lawnmower engine and a Peerless 820 transaxle out of a lawnmower. Yes. All lawnmower parts. I actually went by the United States Lawnmower Racing Association rule book. That way I had some kind of guidelines. But yeah, it's the same wheelbase, and so it was a little scary. Our company's based out of Chicago. We've been in business for about 81 years now, and we're a fuel system or fuel additive company. So we've been doing it a long time, and so when we say that our product does something, we stand behind it. We make several products. We got stabilizers, heat, 104 octane boost, AlumiSeal. You might have seen some of these products out there. So we got a full line of products. And there's some kind of neat fuel timelines that we've got here. The first gasoline pump was in Wayne, Indiana, back in 1885. Another thing that's kind of neat to me was that there was flex fuel back in 1908, and that the Model T ran on gasoline and ethanol. So a lot of people don't know that. Let's see, in 1988, we had the first ethanol gasoline blended mandate in Denver, Colorado. So ethanol's been around for a while, and it started out in Denver. Let's see, in 2008, the E10 really got on board, where they was forcing gas stations to use 10% ethanol. And they did that by incentives where if you used it, you know, you got a discount on your fuel or your taxes. So that's why you see a lot of non-ethanol fuel that costs so much now. They don't have the incentives. In 2010, E15 fuel specification presented by the EPA. So the 15% has passed, but it's going to be kind of hard for them to implement the 15% in fuel, because the gas stations still have to offer the 10%. So basically they got to get rid of one of their gases to add the 15% to it. So it's going to create a little problem, which is good as far as all of us are concerned, because 15% is not good on your small engine or your motorcycle. Ethanol is made from mainly from corn in America. Any kind of sugar or wheat product can make ethanol fuel. We just got a lot of corn up here. Down in South America, they use sugar cane. So they use a lot of ethanol down there. And E10 is 10% ethanol and 90% gasoline. The E15 is 15% ethanol, 85% gasoline, and the E85 is 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. Only the flex cars can use the 85 E85 fuel. And this is all biofuel. Whenever you mix any kind of grain or ethanol product with gasoline, it's a biofuel. And depending on your location in the country, you may have ethanol-free fuel. So I have a lot of people come by and talk about, oh, Johnny's down the road has got ethanol-free that I buy for my lawnmower or my small power equipment, which is kind of nice because, you know, the smaller the equipment is, usually the worst case of corrosion you're going to get with these carburetors. They sit around more than anything. So it's good to use the non-ethanol fuel in your small equipment. Or in your motorcycle. A lot of the guys at this show have been coming by and say, yeah, I use the non-ethanol fuel whenever I can find it. And in some states, you know, they have it. It's kind of funny, you know, you don't see it that much or even advertised, but everywhere I go, somebody comes up to me and tells me that there's a gas station down the road that's got ethanol-free fuel. So what we found out was there's a website called puregas.com, and on that site it'll tell you every gas station that's got non-ethanol fuel, and they also have an app that you can put on your phone, and you can pull it right up and find out where the closest non-ethanol fuel is. Most all the marinas, they have non-ethanol fuel, but again, when you get the non-ethanol fuel, you're paying for it. Usually it's a higher cost. And another thing about the 10% ethanol fuel is that some states don't mandate that you put the 10% ethanol fuel sticker on the gas pump. So you might think you're not getting ethanol fuel, but it is in there. So you can't go by what the pump says. Any questions about that so far? Okay. Ethanol blended fuel. It's ethanol is an alcohol used to oxygenate and boost the octane of fuel. The EPA mandated the use of oxygenated fuel, and it helps. What's good about ethanol is it burns clean. So that's one of the good things about ethanol fuel. The other good thing is that, you know, we're not as dependent on foreign oil. So that's the two main reasons why we use ethanol fuel. Motorcycle engines produced today are compatible with E10, and that's the newer models. But if you got an older bike, you better be careful about those fuel lines, any plastic and rubber that's in your system, fuel pumps, things like that, because ethanol will eat plastic and rubber and corrode metal. Well, they say 2001 and newer, but it's around 2006 where you really got the good materials that they started putting in cars and motorcycles, things like that. So anything newer than, I'd say, 2006, you're better off than you are with the older stuff. If you got anything older than 2006, I'd be replacing the fuel lines and anything that you can replace is rubber or plastic with the new products.
If you have to store E10, will STA-BIL work?
The question was if you have to store E10 to stable work, and yes, it does. It'll work it up to the E85 fuel. Yes. To keep it fresh, we guarantee it a year. Recommended dosage up to a year. Let's see. So there's a lot of concern, especially with motorcycles, because one of the problems we got with motorcycles is you got a tank sitting right out there in the weather. It's in the sun. It's going to get hot. It's going to cool off at night. You're going to end up with a lot of condensation in your tank, which creates a lot of water that's part of the problem that ethanol causes. So the AMA is fighting against ethanol. You definitely don't want 15% in your bike. So they're trying to do a lot of mandates about how motorcyclists can use ethanol fuel. The reasons why you mixing that alcohol with gasoline together is it's causing an oxygenator, so it adds oxygen, which makes it burn clean. It also improves combustion, burns cleaner, and drops the CO2 level. So that's one of the things I said that is good about ethanol fuel. Some of the issues that we're going to start with is ethanol cuts the life of gas in half when it's added to fuel. So I used to say fuel started breaking down 60 to 90 days from the refinery. Now it's 30 to 45 days with the ethanol fuel. So it does break down the fuel a lot faster. Also, ethanol, any alcohol, attracts moisture. So with motorcycles or any engine that's running beside your car and truck has an open vent system. So what happens is as you're vented in the humidity in the air, it brings in the moisture. The ethanol grabs the moisture, lets the air go back out, and then brings in more moisture. So it creates a lot of water in your fuel system, especially on an open vent system, especially in a humid area like Florida. Have a lot of problems with the water. So the ethanol is a corrosive. Well, you're bringing in water, that's another corrosive. So this is why your fuel is breaking down a lot faster. Also, ethanol is a cleaner. It's an alcohol. So it cleans the inside of your system out. You used to get a nice brown film on your gas tank. Well, that actually protected your metal. Well, now that it's clean and you leave your tank half full, it's not if, but when you get moisture in your tank, that it's going to rust twice as fast. That's why we recommend you keep your tanks full now. We also have a corrosion inhibitor to help do that with our STABIL fuel stabilizer. And like I said, the ethanol is real aggressive to plastic, rubber, and your metals, your steel and your aluminum. And just so you know, I don't care what anybody says, there's nothing to stop the ethanol from eating plastic and rubber. All we're going to do is extend the life of it by keeping your fuel fresh. What our corrosion inhibitor that we use actually protects the steel and the aluminum from rusting. So another thing that happens with when you got ethanol fuel is, along with attracting moisture, the fuels, a lot of the manufacturers tend to use the ethanol as an octane boost. So it raises your octane up when you put ethanol in, which is good. But what happens is the water that gets in your system, because it attracts moisture, it ends up grabbing the ethanol. This is when it's just sitting around. It ends up grabbing the ethanol, mixing with the water, they mix together, and then what happens is the water takes the ethanol to the bottom of the tank because it's heavier than gas. Well, what that does, it takes your octane down. So that bottom layer of water and gas, it'll actually run pretty good. It's alcohol and water, that'll run just fine. But when you get back to that gas that was started out at 87 octane, well now it's 84, 83 octane. You're going to get a lot of detonation and you could have engine failure. So phase separation is really bad, and there's nothing that'll reverse phase separation. When that happens, you got to clean it out and start over. The other thing about ethanol is you're actually losing power and performance. You might have noticed when you started using ethanol fuel that you got less mileage. Problem with ethanol is that you in a lot of cases, you're losing horsepower and performance. And then again with the corrosion, you got a corrosive with alcohol, attracting more moisture, you got a lot of corrosion. And these are just some examples of filters. the fuel filter on that Triumph over there. It's probably where he used to run non-ethanol fuel. Then he started running ethanol fuel, and with all those the ethanol cleaning your system, and your filter just caught all that garbage, which is what it's supposed to do. But your filter is what you want to check out right off the bat, because it's going to work. It's going to clog it. So it'll also eat your filters too with the alcohol. So that's something that you want to check constantly, especially on an older unit that ran with regular gas and then ended up with putting ethanol fuel in it. And then more examples of the inside of a carburetor that's corroded. So another reason why we suggest leaving your tanks full is because if you try to drain them, it's hard to get all the fuel out of the bowl and the pumps. And you're going to end up with some gum and corrosion in the carburetor. So that's why we suggest leaving the fuel in with a stabilizer in it. Ethanol blended fuel issues. You have engine hesitation. There's a lack of performance, like I said, with the ethanol fuel. You can have engine stalling, rust and corrosion, and it's just the same things we've been talking about. It creates a lot of corrosion. That's why we got a lot of cleaners, and you need to keep a cleaner in your fuel system all the time. If you don't stay ahead of the ethanol and the corrosion problems, it's going to bite you sooner or later. So you need to pay now, or you can pay later. It's a lot cheaper just to keep it clean all the time. And when you keep a cleaner in your system's going to be running at its optimal performance, and you're going to have it nice and clean all the time. Fuel could go bad in as little as 30 days. It can create gum, varnish, and corrosion. And you're going to lose your top end, which is what I was talking about with the octane going down when the fuel starts separating. And the gum and varnish, everybody's seen your lawnmower carburetor or whatever, your string trimmer where you took it apart and you saw the gum and varnish. So you need to use a stabilizer to prevent this. And because the fuel breaks down so fast now, you need to do it not just when you're storing, but during the season also. Because ethanol is a solvent, and it will strip all the dust and sediment away, is another reason why we're suggesting keeping the tank full. Like I said earlier, it cleans your system, and you have no protection in there. When the moisture gets in, it's going to corrode twice as fast. So that's why we recommend keeping it full. You can see this tank here where it's rusting, where there's no fuel in there, and that's just an example of what can happen inside of your tank. So there's a lot of articles on how to store your motorcycle or any engine. And with Eastwood, AMA's got theirs, Honda. You can go to our STA-BIL website, and we got a lot of suggestions on how to store your bike. We know down in Florida that you don't store it too much. You're riding it all the time. But a lot of Floridians or snowbirds, as I call it, you know, they got bikes up north, they got bikes down here, and a lot of equipment, so you got to take care of them in both places. We got some myths here. So fuel additives can cure or prevent all issues associated with ethanol blended fuel. No fuel additive can prevent ethanol from acting as a solvent. So it's going to clean the system like I was talking about earlier. No fuel additive can protect your rubber components. We talked about that earlier. No product will prevent all issues from occurring, no matter how revolutionary they claim to be. So what we're saying is, even our STA-BIL stabilizer that's been around for a long time can stop everything from happening. All we're doing is prolonging the process. We just feel that we do it better than the rest. So it's still going to break down, but we're just extending the life of it so that it doesn't create a lot of problems with your unit. Myth 2, fuel additives can make stale or phase separation fuel usable again. Gasoline oxidation or stale fuel or phase separation fuels are chemical changes that cannot be reversed. Oxidation creates gums, sludge, and acidic chemicals. So that's what we're trying to prevent. We're prolonging that process, keeping that fuel as fresh as long as we can so that it won't gum and varnish. No fuel additive can reverse these chemical reactions and make the product acceptable to an engine. No chemical agent can be added to EO or E10 gasoline in a reasonable quantity that will recombine a phase separated layer. So you cannot reverse it. Fuel cannot be rejuvenated. I get a lot of those questions. Well, I didn't put STA-BIL in. What do I need to do now? Well, get that cleaned out, put new fuel in. Myth 3, ethanol blended fuels are bad and should be avoided. Ethanol blended fuels, E10, are common throughout much of the U.S. And although non-ethanol fuel is generally preferred in marine and small engine circles, modern engines are developed to meet performance and durability targets with E10 gasoline. So they are taking measures with new engines to fight the effects of ethanol so that you won't have all these problems. E10 gasoline is approved and warranted by major engine manufacturers from small engines through marine and automotive. Proper fuel management is all that is needed to successfully utilize E10 fuel with little or no issues. So what we're saying is you need to use an additive with E10 fuel, especially in your bike. You're going to have a lot of condensation, corrosion problems. So you need to put an additive in, and we suggest all the time. You could probably get by with not doing it in every tank, but what we're trying to get in everybody's frame of mind is to get used to putting it in every time, because you'll forget. The next thing you know, you forgot to put it in, then you was planning on riding next weekend, and that turns into next month, and that turns into 2 months down the road. So if you put it in every tank, you won't have to worry about whether you got it in there or not. You kind of get in the habit of that. Every time I get a gas can for my lawnmower, I put it in year round. I'll never have a carburetor problem. So we've got our STA-BIL ethanol treatment for everyday use. It's got more cleaners, more water removers, more corrosion inhibitors than our STA-BIL for storage. So it's constantly fighting the effects of ethanol, and if you don't keep up with it, ethanol will get ahead of you, and then you're going to have problems. We got our STA-BIL for storage that everybody's been using for a long time to keep their mowers or small equipment when they store them for over the winter periods. So that's been around for a long time. It still works for storage, but for everyday use, you need to use the ethanol treatment. STA-BIL is the only fuel additive brand that's been recommended by over 100 original equipment manufacturers. So a lot of the manufacturers know there's a problem, so they come to us and we try to help them out with their problems, and they're helping us advertise. So they know there's a lot of problems with small engine in general. And we also make marine formula also. Yes, sir. The question is, how long is the shelf life of STA-BIL? After you open, well, the shelf life is many years before you open it. After you open it, we say 2 years. That's safe for us to say. It's always conditioned because STA-BIL will break down just like anything else eventually. But it's safe for us to say 2 years after you open it. Not that it won't last longer, but if you have it in a harsh condition or a cool and dry place, it'll make a difference. And when you do add it, it will keep your gas fresh for a year, at least a year. So in conclusion, E10 ethanol absolutely is an acceptable fuel for everyday use in all cars, power sports, and small engines. E15 ethanol absolutely is not an acceptable fuel for any other than cars and trucks manufactured to utilize it. So that'd be the newer cars. And so you need to consult your manufacturer, and they'll let you know what you should be running in your unit or motorcycle. No matter the manufacturer of fuel additives, it will never solve 100% of the issues. We talked about this earlier. We can't stop it from happening. We just prolong it, making it and slowing it down. So take extra care when converting from non-ethanol fuel to ethanol fuel. If you're going back and forth, you can have some of these build-up problems where with non-ethanol fuel, you get a build-up in your system, which is not that bad, but when you put ethanol fuel in it after the fact, it's going to clean all that off. You're going to end up with it in your system, clogging up your jets. So you got to be careful about swapping back and forth. And don't immediately assume it's E10, that E10 is the problem. All gasoline and diesel types need the same type of simple prevention, if not immediately consuming fuel. So what we're saying is you need to use an additive. You know, if you don't use ours, use somebody else, but you need a stabilizer in that fuel, you need some cleaners in that fuel. Otherwise, you can have trouble within 3 or 4 weeks' time.